Our speaker this morning is John W. Smith. Matt, Dietrich. John W. Smith is just a guest to hear our speaker today. Matt seems to be shy and quiet until he gets in the pulpit. And he comes to us from Michigan. Maybe that's what there is in him. He's a mechanic. I like that part. James Sanderson was the brother who mostly encouraged him to come to Sunset, and a lot of us know James and love him. Matt has enjoyed very much building relationships, lifelong relationships with his classmates and others like myself. I won't ever forget Matt because of his character and passion. That's probably the number one word that was defined by his classmates for him. Passionate. Gentle on the outside. Then he gets in the pulpit and he is filled with passion. There is more than meets the eye, some say. There is a lot there, a lot of depth. He's a serious man. He's a very caring man, a godly man. One of his classmates challenges him, "Get ready. God is fixing to do things in you that you will not imagine." And I believe that. One of his classmates said that it is unanimous. Out of our class, he is the most gifted preacher. John has been a good example for you, but you've been such a wonderful brother for all of us, and we love you so much. Come and preach the word.
When Isaac gave his senior sermon, he mentioned that he had an oversized shirt and hoping that his jacket would cover it up. Well, I'm kind of hoping my jacket covers up my wrinkly shirt. This was supposed to be one of those wrinkle-free kind of shirts, but it didn't happen. And there's a reason why single men buy wrinkle-free shirts, Number one, when I have to use an iron, it gets pretty sketchy. And number two, I seem to put more wrinkles in it after I'm done ironing, which has been such a mystery to me. Well, that's really the fireworks of this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like for you to create a vision with me. If you could envision your family, loved ones, or somehow trapped in slavery by an evil man. Oh, where are you going with this? Hang on, I'm going somewhere with this. You may not like it, but I'm going somewhere with this. And you had to choose someone to go in there and get them out. Then who would it be? And certainly if you're like me, you would think of people who are strong and big, powerful, big name kind of people, right? Big name kind of people like, Mr. T in the A-Team, right? Those are pretty good guys. Or the one and only Chuck Norris. And I'm not talking about the jokes. I don't care for the jokes. But most likely you probably don't know any of those people, so give me someone real, right? All right. How about this? How about an 80-year-old man who was a herdsman of sheep and was wanted for murder? No, I didn't think so. But you see, that is exactly the kind of man that God did choose. That God's plan for getting the people out of bondage in Egypt was to send a man named Moses. At this point in his life, pretty old. I mean, the good days was well behind him. He was well beyond his prime. And he was living just a pretty ordinary life. He had a house off in the village, wife, kids, had breakfast, went to work, had dinner, went to bed. And you would look at that and say, there's no way. How could he do that? So what does God see in Moses that he believes he could do that? Well, first of all, it tells me that God certainly sees people differently than what men see. And the first thought that might have came to your mind was 1 Samuel 16, where God tells Samuel this incredible statement. He says, "For God sees not as man sees," and praise God for that. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I mean, isn't that awesome how God sees his people? Despite how everything on the outside, like Moses, who's looking so rough. I mean, there isn't this much there to look at, right? And, we look pretty rough too. I'm not trying to beat up on Moses. But despite all of that, God is able to do powerful things through what's on the inside. And what I want us to see so badly today in this is that if God can see that in all of us, then we have no excuses of what God cannot do through us. We don't have any. And that's what we want, right? To be used up powerfully by God. And that's where this is headed. But have you ever wondered, have you ever asked the question, why did God come to Moses at the age of 80? What is that all about? Why not sooner? Why not 30 or 40? Did God not see that in Moses then? And if not, why didn't he? Why did Moses have to wait so long? And so this morning, I want to take you on a walk with Moses. I want us to go through the journey with him together. I want us to really get inside this story and to picture everything around it and to see the emotion that's going through this man, because there's a huge application in our life that we can learn from him. But it can easily be overlooked. Exodus chapter 2, verse 10. The child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses and said, because I drew him out of the water. When Moses was born, he was described as one beautiful baby, like a lot of babies are. But Moses' description here means more than just good looks. It also carries over the idea that this baby is going to be something special for a special task. And I can picture Moses' mother holding her child in her arms and looking down at her son and thinking, is this the one? Is this the one that's going to relieve us from this bondage? My son? And unfortunately, Moses' parents weren't able to enjoy the birth of their son for long. They weren't able to go home and arrange the baby room, write down all the first in the baby book. Because as you know, Pharaoh ordered all the male babies to be thrown into the river. And so in order to keep him alive, they stuffed him in that basket and put him next to the river, and was found by Pharaoh's daughter and became her own child. And as Moses grew up in the house of Pharaoh, he became a very educated man. In Acts chapter 7, verse 22, just before Stephen is stoned, Stephen says that Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians. And you have to look those details up on your own time, but Moses was a smart guy. And Stephen also says that Moses was a man of power and deeds. I mean, Moses was something. He was really something. He was brought up well. I thought this was kind of interesting. You may not relate, but it was interesting. Apparently, Moses' good looks didn't leave him as a baby. It said in history that Moses was so handsome that people would actually take double takes when they walked by the guy. They go, man, Moses. A quick application for me in this lesson is I didn't get Moses' good looks, But, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because by the looks of it, I'm not alone here. For me to say that, I have to love you guys a lot. I hope you know that. I love you. So here you have Moses, this powerful, young, educated, good-looking prince of Egypt. And you think, wow, man, Moses, look how cool you are. Look how great you are. Man, it's amazing. Did everyone see that? Everyone with me? I'm doing pretty good. So he's up there. He's way up there. But don't think too much of it. Don't think too much of it. Because from here, Moses is going to come crashing down. I'm bringing him down. Verse 11, chapter 2. When Moses had grown up, he went out to his brother and looked on their hard labors. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. You see, Moses didn't just learn the life of the Egyptians. Moses learned who he was and to what family he belonged to. Certainly in the time when Moses grew up, he would have learned all about the stories of his mother and how he was thought to be this beautiful child and all the expectations of him were to be. And over in Hebrews 11:24, It says that when Moses had grown up, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. And so you can clearly see Moses is right on board for wanting to become everything he was thought of. And at the age of 40, Moses believed that he was ready. Moses believed that he was ready. And so here's Moses looking at this situation all unfold before him and thinking to himself, this is it. This is the time where I become what I was born to do. But it didn't go well. Not at all. Moses' great plan for getting these people out ends in great failure. And he's forced to run away to a foreign land. And he settles in Midian. And Moses, he isn't there just for the weekend. He spends 40 years of his life here. And in Midian, Moses becomes a lowly shepherd boy. I just can't imagine what might have been going through Moses' mind. How do you go from living in the house of Pharaoh to watching sheep? And for me, I picture Moses sitting over some hillside, looking down at these sheep, whatever sheep do, I don't have a clue, and thinking to himself, you have got to be kidding me. This is why my parents hid me. This is why my parents risked their life, so that I would be able to watch these stupid sheep. No, I was supposed to be somebody great. This isn't greatness. I'm not sure what this is, but I know it isn't great. I suppose on the other hand, Moses could have looked at those sheep and said, now this is what I was born to do. Oh boy, if Moses said that, then this is where my lesson tanks. The question I want you to think about today is, why did Moses fail at the age of 40? You know, by the simple look of the guy, you would think there's nothing that he couldn't do. Nothing could stop him. You know, he was young. He was the prince of Pharaoh, educated, good looking. And surely he thought the same thing. And you see, that's the problem. That Moses thought by his own hand he could do this. But he was wrong. He was wrong. And you see, what Moses is going to learn that in Midian. These aren't just some wasted years in his life here. What Moses is going to learn here in Midian is more valuable than anything he learned back in Egypt. And it's also what we need to learn. And by his decisions, God will use this time to completely humble him. And if you know your Numbers well, the book of Numbers, Numbers 12 verse 3 says, now the man Moses was the most humblest man on the earth. And so you think, man, that can't be right. It says right there. Well, you got to think about that too now. How do you think that happened? I mean, does having the character of this humble person not just fall out of the sky? Are you born with that? Does it come naturally to you? I mean, I love to be naturally ripped, but I'm not. So where did this come from? How did Moses become the most humblest man on the earth? And what I want to suggest to you is that it happened right here in Midian. That 40 years in humiliation of herding sheep is what molds and shapes Moses into the man that we all know him by. And it's also by this experience that Moses is able to do the things he does at the age of 80 until the day he dies. You know, I really like thinking about things, and I got stuck on this. And I want to give it to you to think about, just for your own fun. When we pray, when we want to be more humble, how do you think that happens? Could it be possible? Could it be possible that God would give us a Midian experience of our own? And you see, if that's true, then there can be nothing wrong with it, even though it's uncomfortable. Because there can be nothing wrong in a situation in our life that would cause us to recognize how inadequate we are without God. No, we need that. I need that. Because it's so easy to want to just do all these great things for God, but we'll just leave God out of the picture. And I can see from this story, this is not a very good idea. It's not an idea that will work. And as Moses grew older and the beard grew bigger, I'm sure Moses gives up on being this great person and thinks to himself, this is it. This is going to be the rest of my life. Watching these sheep. What a life. But God never forgot about Moses. He never forgot about the people. I love this so much. It says right at the end of Exodus chapter 2, before the call of Moses, God says, I hear the cry of my people, and I took notice of them. And don't you love that about God yourself, that he listened to his people when they cry out to them? I love that. And God says, I got someone who can help you. He's a little ripe, but he's going to work. This time, he's going to work. And from here, I want you to see the difference in this man. This man is not the man he used to be. Chapter 3, verse 11. Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? What an interesting statement by Moses, It's really interesting. If you ask that same question to Moses 40 years ago, you think his answer to this would be a little differently? I sure think so. I think Moses would say, what do you mean, who am I? I'm the prince of Pharaoh, young, good-looking, powerful. That's who I am. But Moses says, I watch sheep. That's what I do. There's no way I can do that. I already tried that. It didn't work. So why would this time? Why would this time be any different? And God gives Moses the answer to that question. And it's the answer to all of us as well. And this is what draws the line in the sand of whether or not we succeed or fail. And that is, God says, I will be with you. And see, instead of you trying to do it all on your own, oh, you let me help you out here. And you see, that's the same way it is for us. Try to do it all on our own effort, but no help from God, we too will fail. It can't happen. And I know that probably sounds like some kind of, cliche phrase, God is with me kind of thing. That's a bunch of baloney, really. I mean, don't you find anything in knowing that your God is with you? I mean, that should put a little fire in you, right? I mean, a little something. Come on now. Moses sums all this up in chapter 4, verse 13 by saying, send the message by whoever you will. Moses feels totally inadequate to be able to do this. And you know something? Moses is right. He's right. That 40 years has paid off well. Because in himself he is inadequate. And all of us in ourselves are inadequate. But, I'm going to give you some good news now. But we're not with God. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul says, such confidence we have through Christ toward God. Not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God. That's where it's at. Now, do we believe that? I mean, do we really believe that all of the things that we're able to do on this earth is because of God? Jesus says in John 15:5, you are the branches and I am the vine. And apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, we can either believe what Jesus says is true, which is always a good thing, or we can just, learn the hard way. We can kind of be like that pro athlete who says, hey, man, you see that triple-double I had the other night? Third one this week. Now, how many people do that? Oh, man. Adequacy's from God, no adequacy's in me. I did that. I was out on that court. I made those shots. Ooh. You see, that's the kind of attitude that has to be broken, and I believe that's what a meeting experience does. It breaks you. But that guy probably needs more than one. He probably needs about 6 or 7 to start off with. It took this humbling experience in Moses' life for him to be able to see it. You see, when Moses humbled himself, that was when God used him so powerfully. But also, his own growth in God grew so much. It's so breathtaking to me. I want you to see it, because it's so good. When Moses goes back to Egypt the second time, and he successfully gets the people out, and they're marching towards the promised land, they divide the Red Sea, they go through on dry ground, God's raining manna down from heaven for them to eat, they defeat the Amalekites. Moses goes up on the mountain, he's in the presence of God, he comes back down with the law, and then they build that golden calf. And this is, right here, God's had it. He was patient with all the grumbling. But this has done it for him. He's done with these people. And he tells God, and God tells Moses, you go right ahead into that land full of milk and honey, but I'm not going with you. And this is it. This is the moment where we find out who Moses is. What is he going to do? Is he going to tell God, I understand why you feel that way, I really do. But don't worry, I can take us the rest of the way from here. I can do it. I can do it all on my own here. We'll catch up with you later, God. Not this Moses. Moses tells God, if your presence will not go with me, then do not lead us up from here. Moses says, I don't care how great that land is. I don't care how much milk and honey it flows. If you are not in it, I am not going. I'll remain right here in this wilderness before I even think about taking another step without you. And for me, I see Moses' relationship so close in that he values that more than anything else. And I think of what David says in the 63rd Psalm. David says that your love, God, is better than life. And I hope we can say the same thing. That we can say that we value our relationship with the Father more than we value life itself. So, why the lesson today? I didn't, put this together thinking I was speaking to a bunch of prideful people. I sure hope it didn't come across that way. But I wanted to show that God can do great things, powerful things to the humble. And it's not about the stuff. It's not about the stuff. It's not about the education, the good looks, and the wealth. See, Moses had all that. He had all of that, and it did him nothing. It was only when Moses lost it all is when he became something. And you see, I really put this together just for me. Because I always thought that was kind of like a requirement for God, to have all of that. And it bothered me because I didn't have it. I'm not an educated person. I'm going to tell you something. I struggled through school my whole life. I actually needed special help just to get by. And it was discouraging and doubting. And I wasn't a person that was raised up in the church at all. I probably only read 2 books of the Bible before I came here. I had no idea what an Ephesian or a Corinthian was, let alone Jeroboam and Rehoboam, But now, I got memory work coming out of my nose. And so, and I honestly thought, could God honestly use me? Really, I did. But the more I know this and the more I know my Bible, I can say absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And God can use every one of you, and we can all bring a smile to our God, and that's what we want. That brings me joy. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God is not looking for degrees, certificates, grades, power, appearance, whether or not you're born on the church pew, or even your 6-pack abs, which that shouldn't be hard for any of us. And you want to know what I have to say about all of that? You really want to know? I'm going to tell you about it. I say, thank you, God. That's what I say. And by knowing this fact, we can put down all the lies of Satan, all the excuses that we seem to come up with about ourselves, and start viewing ourselves in the way God sees us. And we can all together say with Isaiah, when God asks, whom shall I send? And we say, send me, Lord. Send me.